Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rates and Lanes podcast. I'm your host, Rico Muhammad. I will be joined shortly by my co-host, Mr. Chuck Snow. And tonight, I'm really excited for tonight's show. It's a show that we are kind of overdue on bringing to you guys, but we think that we have the perfect guy to come on board and explain a lot of things for you guys. Tonight, our special guest. Um, well, I'm gonna hold up before I introduce them, but let me just say, make sure that you got your pen and pad out. And good thing that we are on Instagram. We're broadcasting live on Instagram. We're broadcasting live on YouTube. We're also on Facebook. So this video will be up for you to go back to and refer to. And while we're talking about the video being up, if you haven't already done so, please make sure that you subscribe, like, share the video. If you find any information that we share with you guys tonight helpful in any kind of way, by all means, please help us by spreading the word and liking, sharing the video, and subscribing to the channel, especially on YouTube and the other sources on Facebook as well. So with that being said, and without any further ado, I want to kind of jump over to this week's reports from trend lines from DAT. We're showing that unfortunately, spot rates are continuing their midwinter slide across all three segments. And we're also seeing that the price of diesel fuel is starting to slowly kind of incrementally increase. We're showing that the national average jumped up by almost a half a percentage point. We're showing that the national average price for diesel fuel right now sits at about $4.62 per gallon. All of this is relative because, like I said, I'm really excited about our special guest. So let me go ahead and bring on my co-host. Because I don't want to waste a lot of time. We only have a little bit of time with our guest. So good evening, Chuck. How are you?
We're doing great, Rico. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Excited for tonight's show.
Yeah, so am I. This is a long time coming. We've been looking for someone like Colton to bring on the show to help educate us.
Absolutely. So without any further ado, want you to go ahead and introduce Colton to everyone. Tell them where Colton is from, and we'll bring Colton up and on board with us.
We've got Colton Lawrence. He is the founder or co-founder of Trucker CFO, and that's what they do. They are accountants that specialize in trucking, and they are if you use their services, they are your CFO, Chief Financial Officer of your company. Whether you have one truck or 40 trucks, it doesn't matter. And you need somebody like this in your corner. I remember many years ago, my wife and business partner and we were talking to a bunch of different large trucking companies, and the one thing we came away with was the person at the helm of the ship, or the person standing beside the guy at the helm of the ship, was an accountant, was a CFO every time. And lo and behold, I heard about Colton, and we're bringing him to you, ladies and gentlemen. So with no further ado, welcome to the Rates and Lanes podcast, Colton. Great to have you on.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. That's quite the introduction. I feel more important than maybe I am, but I'll take it. And I will say you're absolutely right. We do act as the CFO for our clients, and it is really something that we try to impress upon our clients, and that is that they are the CEOs of their business. And if they came in to this operation just looking for another job, a paycheck, they're doing it wrong. They should not be in the driver's seat as an independent contractor or owner operator if that is their mindset. They need to change the paradigm there and really see themselves as the CEO of a small business first and the driver of that truck second. And if they will do that, they are able to improve their profitability and they're able to make more money. And oftentimes they're going to make much, much more money than they could as a company driver.
Oh yeah, if they do it right, I totally agree. And it's funny you talk about that paradigm. It's so important to have that paradigm shift. You cannot think of yourself you can't get into this thing just to make some money if you don't have that passion to build something and to do well. And to build something doesn't mean you have to have 20 trucks um, or 10 trucks even, you can build a good business with 1 or 2 trucks.
Absolutely. And that's the important thing too, is folks need to know what their goals are. If their goal is to have, I say just one truck, as if that's, something less than somebody else's goal. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with just one truck. You can make a good living and have a great business with that one truck.
Yes.
It's more important that you understand what your goals are, and stay in that lane, right? Stay true to what it is you're trying to accomplish. And if you'll do that, you can be successful. And if your goals change over time, that's okay too. But whatever it is you're trying to do, make sure you're accomplishing it at that point in time. I tell people that with any business, you are always one decision away from success or failure. And assuming that one decision was success, you're now one more decision away from success or failure. And it's a never ending cycle. You're always one decision away from success or failure. And you've got to understand that, and you've got to know what it is you're trying to accomplish. And that's an important part of what we try to do with our clients.
So Colton, I know that it almost sounds like you've been listening to the show a little bit, because we preach staying in one lane, and what we mean by that, of course, we affectionately call the show Rates and Lanes. We talk about understanding what lanes affect, and the rates, how those different things affect your company. Trying to make sure that you kind of find your niche. If you can't necessarily be a all 48 states carrier if you got one truck. Try to narrow down, try to focus on what it is that you can provide, and provide exceptionally well to a few customers. And that if you can do that, you can find yourself in a great little market, great little niche.
Yeah.
But I wanted to take an opportunity. A lot of people jumped into the trucking industry over the past couple of years because it seems like it was the hot thing to do. A lot of people just jumped in, didn't necessarily have a business background, and some of the things that it sounds like that you guys offer and that you guys bring to the table. And I want to give this an opportunity. I'm gonna kind of throw a little softball to you but as the things that you guys kind of offer, if someone is out here right now operating with 1 or 2 trucks, doesn't necessarily have a CPA or an accountant currently, what are some things that you guys can do to help kind of streamline or better make their operation a little bit more efficient?
Well, it's a great question. There's a lot to that. In fact, we are by Friday of this week, I'll say possibly over the weekend, we're still finalizing some stuff, but we're going to be putting out our 2022 tax season guide. It's an ebook. It's about 40 pages long. That sounds a little bit long, right? Who wants to read 40 pages about taxes? Not even me. But the point of this ebook is that you can go in and pick and choose the points of interest that you may have, and you can read about how those things can help your operation. And there's a lot to it. And even this ebook is kind of a compilation of podcasts and other content that we've put together to help individuals that are in that exact situation you're talking about to be successful. We would have to spend probably the next 24 hours, not just the 1 hour we have on this podcast, to really get all of that information out.
Right.
So the most important thing is that they have a plan and that they start to execute on that plan. And if they don't even know where to start, they need to give us a call and we can help them out. We can get them going in the right direction, start talking to them about the things that they should be doing. And then from there, they can start, whittling away at all of the many different things that they can and should be doing to help themselves be profitable. There's so many things from choosing the right business entity to taking care of your paperwork. There's common mistakes that people make that we talk about. There's just so much that it can become overwhelming. And so we try to scale it back and say, hey, here's some key points. Take these key points and then try to figure out where you need to start. The worst thing they can do is take what I call the ostrich approach. And that is just stick their head in the sand and think that it's going to, resolve itself. It's not. It's just going to get worse. And so you got to start somewhere, and you got to start sometime. You might as well start now, and you might as well start with Trucker CFO.
If you, I want to quickly add this programming note. If you have a question for us or for Colton, you can use the chat feature. Just if you're on, the only where the chat feature doesn't necessarily work if you're watching on Instagram. But if you go over to Facebook, or if you jump over to YouTube, search for Rates and Lanes podcast. If you're watching a live on either one of those platforms, you can use the chat feature and you can type us a question, and we'll be able to see it real time, and we'll bring up that question if you want to get involved in the conversation. So that's one thing that you just said really quickly, Colton, that really caught my eye, that I think is something maybe worth drilling down on a little bit more. If someone is out there right now and they don't have those things, and you talked about having a plan, say if they have a goal or aspiration to begin to grow their company, if they were to get involved with you guys, by you guys being the trucking CFO, you guys can help them come up with and devise a plan to maybe help them accomplish those goals. Am I hearing you correctly as far as ways of allocating different monies and stuff like that with their operation?
Yeah. First and foremost, we need to understand where it is you want to go. Right there, we're going to work with you very differently if your goal is to operate as a one truck owner operator versus if your goal is to grow to a fleet of 10 or 20 trucks. It's apples and oranges. It's not anywhere the same type of thing that we're going to be doing with you. So there's no right or wrong answer to that. Don't think
Absolutely.
that because I say 10 or 20 trucks that's more that's better than somebody that's doing one truck. No, understand what it is you want to do. And then once you do, we're going to talk to you. We're going to talk to you about how you should be doing things. Very first thing that often comes up is, should I have a business entity? By business entity, we're saying LLC. Should I run as a sole proprietor? S corporation election often comes into this. What are the pros and cons of doing all this? And you need to have this plan out of the gate, because oftentimes decisions are made too late. Sometimes you miss the opportunity. As a tax preparer, there's nothing more frustrating than working with somebody and doing their taxes. Let's say, we're starting tomorrow. We basically will start filing tax returns for 2022. Right. So let's say I'm working with somebody and doing their taxes, and they come to me and they say, okay, here's everything I got. There you go. Prepare my taxes. Well, I might start going through that information, or somebody on my team might start going through that information, and we're going to see information. We're going to see opportunities from 6, 9, 12 months ago that are in now the rear view mirror, to use an analogy from trucking, right? It's 12 months in the past. And sometimes those are things that we now can't do anything about. It's too late. We can't change it. It's in the past. Right. And so it's frustrating as a tax preparer to be reactive in nature when it comes to filing taxes versus taking a proactive approach. And I think it's a very good lesson for life in general. You want to be proactive about the things that you're doing. If you're running a business reactively, you're always going to be behind. Be proactive in what you're trying to do, especially
any
in
business where I think you've got to be prepared ahead of time is trucking for everything.
Yeah. Right. So by being proactive, by saying, okay, this is where I want to go. Let's choose your business entity, get that business entity set up. Now that you've got the business entity set up, what is the proper accounting system for you? Should you be doing something more complex like QuickBooks? Have a more full-scale accounting system with full-on financial statements? Or are you leased onto a motor carrier and under a settlement method where you really are only going to need a profit loss statement, and that's going to be sufficient for what we need to do? Let's choose that. There's a very different cost model between the two options. So let's get you into the right method of accounting. Let's get you into the right situation to where we are minimizing your cost. I would rather somebody who knows what they're doing that's paying me less money and is successful than somebody that pays me a bunch of money but isn't successful, because who's going to be the longer term clients? Right. So I would rather somebody paying me less money long term than somebody paying me a lot of money for a more complex system, but that fails.
Colton, are there any cases where you advise people to be sole proprietors in trucking?
No, not really.
Yeah, no, I can't see it. Especially with litigation the way it is against truckers, I can't imagine anybody being a sole proprietor. I know there's some out there, and it just, even somebody leased on with a carrier, if I were them, I would want the protection of a corporation, although they can pierce the corporate veil. We all know that they can come after directors, but to me, it removes you one step.
Yeah, it's just an added protection. And I have to be careful. I'm not an attorney, so I can't
Right?
technically
No,
give
I get
legal
it.
Right.
advice, right? I am a CPA. I can give all the tax advice I want, but it has to be in a one-on-one setting. It has to be specific to your situation. So everything we say here should be taken a little bit of a grain of salt, knowing that every situation is different, and come and talk to us. But that being
It's
said,
generic. No,
it's
I
generic,
think
right?
we get that, and I think
Yeah.
our listeners get that. And it also varies, I think, state to state. There's some state taxation laws that every state has, if I'm not mistaken. Does
Mhm.
your firm work with a lawyer at all? If one of
So
your clients,
yeah, so we offer as a service business entities services. So the setup of those business entities.
okay,
Um, we so when it comes to specific legal guidance, th- you need to be working with somebody in your state. I don't have a group of attorneys with every single state to where I could recommend them. I've got a few that I do know in a lot of the hot spots that we work in
right,
that I can recommend. But generally speaking, when it comes to the concept of setting up the business entity, most of those considerations are going to be from a tax perspective,
right,
knowing that by its nature, they're getting some of the legal protections that come with it. So um, it's important to understand that as a sole proprietor, so for those that don't know, a sole proprietor is basically you just go out and you just start doing business, right? That you don't go out and you don't set something up with the state that's official in terms of like, hey, I'm Trucker Joe LLC, choose a name. Um, a sole proprietor is just somebody who just goes out and starts working. They're working under their social security number as kind of the taxable entity. And you have very little tax protection and you have no legal protection. And so I don't usually recommend it. What we see most of the time is folks set up LLCs. That seems to be, by and large, the most common type of business entity that gets set up. And it's important to understand that LLCs are not an entity recognized by the IRS. That doesn't mean that you can't do them. You absolutely can choose an LLC, but you can't go to the IRS and say, hey, I want to be taxed as an LLC. It doesn't work that way. When you set up an LLC, you are defaulted to one of two types of business entities within the IRS framework. You are a single member LLC, in which case you are going to be taxed as a sole proprietor. It's important to understand that there's a distinction between being taxed as a sole proprietor and actually being a sole proprietor with no legal protections. The LLC provides you those legal protections, but for tax purposes, you're still a sole proprietor. And then if you're a multi-member LLC, you're going to be taxed as a partnership. Those are the two defaults. And then from there, you can elect to have that LLC be taxed as an S corporation, which gets into a whole nother framework of how that entity is taxed.
right.
But to answer your initial question, no, I think one of the very most important things somebody can do coming into this is to set up a business entity. And that's why it's important that they don't come into this thinking it's a job. You should not
right.
be working under your social security number. It's not a paycheck. It is a business, and you need to have a business entity set up out of the gate. And then from there, we can start talking about different tax settings.
Great. I got a major thing that happens, especially in trucking. I'm not sure if this is just unique to trucking, but I know it happens a lot with trucking, especially when guys are starting to hire people, bring people on. Can you talk to us a little bit about the dilemma of paying your potential drivers or on a 1099 versus making them a W-2? What kind of implications or problems that can create, and just kind of maybe some of the pitfalls or pros or cons. I don't want to lead. I don't want to necessarily lead
Can
with
we,
why.
Rico? Can we explain to some members of the audience exactly what the difference is getting out of the gate, so they know the difference between the two classifications?
Absolutely. We'll toss it over to Colton and while we got him here, let's use him to give us a breakdown because I don't want to misspeak.
Okay, great. Yeah, so what you're getting at here is a lot of folks, as they start to grow, they buy that second truck, or they decide, hey, I want to get out of the truck. I'm going to put somebody else in this truck.
Right.
And so they start to grow. They've got other drivers. Now the question is, how do I pay them? What am I going to do? I've got, are they an employee? Are they an independent contractor? Hey, I've worked, I've gone and drove for, ABC Trucking, and they 1099'd me. So now I'm going to just choose to do the same thing and 1099 the drivers I put into my trucks. Or vice versa, I'm going to W-2 them. So it's very important that you understand some of those pitfalls. I will say that 99.9 times out of 100, if that is the way you're set up, you're a small fleet, you've got drivers, you are directing where those drivers are taking that truck. They have very little choice in what goes on with that truck. 99.9 times out of 100, they should be treated as an employee. Now, on the flip side, it's probably 50-50 as to whether or not those types of situations, they actually get treated as a company driver versus an independent contractor. You see it all over the place. And keep in mind, my business is providing taxes to owner operators and independent contractors receiving a 1099. That doesn't mean that every single one of them that receives a 1099 is being properly classified.
Right.
And there is millions and millions of dollars being spent on legal fees with some of these mega carriers and some of the mid-sized carriers related to classification issues. We could do a whole podcast on just
Right.
classification issues, and what is a proper classification. But I think when it pertains to you as a small fleet, the safest way to go is to treat them as W-2 company drivers. But it's also the more expensive way for you to do it, because you now are paying your portion of FICA tax for those company drivers. You've also got to carry other insurances. There's just other stuff that makes it more expensive. And that's why so many of them choose not to, and they just go the 1099 route. Now, it really comes down to how much risk are you willing to take on? The chances that you as a small company are going to be audited, the chances that somebody is going to file some type of labor dispute, within the state that they're from, is smaller the smaller you are. You're not a mega carrier. You don't have 5,000-6,000 independent contractors putting together a class action lawsuit and costing you $120 million. That's not what you have to deal with. There are mega carriers that have, and as a result, many of those mega carriers have gone away from independent contractor models and gone to company driver models. So it's just a matter of the risk that you want to take. If it's too expensive for you, you can do it. It's not like somebody's going to stop you from doing it. It may not become an issue until some of those other things happen where somebody is disgruntled with their situation and they go and file a classification type dispute with the labor agency in A, B, or C state, and you might have to deal with it then.
Or if your driver, God forbid, is in a serious crash,
Yeah,
now all of
perfect
a sudden
example.
you're going to have to deal with it. And I've done it both ways. When I started in running a fleet many years ago, I actually ran with all of our drivers being paid as contractors. And then I'll never forget, I was talking to this old timer, and he scared the pants off me. And he called me out on it. He said, Snow, you don't understand what you're into. You have no clue. And one of those guys you have running around, this is like 44 years ago. And he said, one of those guys you have running around in a cab over all over North America is going to get hurt badly, and you'll be paying for it for the rest of your life. And he scared me so badly. It was on a Saturday. Then on Monday, I legitimized everything, and everybody got payroll deductions, and we paid the WSIB, workman's safety, and unemployment insurance, the whole bit. 3 weeks later, I had a driver blown up in New Jersey. He looked in the fuel tank with a Bic lighter, and Rico, luckily for him, he was your size. He was a large man.
I remember you telling the story. That's why I kind of chuckled.
Yeah, he was about 6'5" and about 300 and some odd pounds, and the bulk of the explosion hit his chest. his hospital bill, and this was in 1978, his hospital bill was $250,000 US back then, okay, which was covered by Workmen's Safety Insurance Board. Okay, so that's why I'm a firm believer in this.
Yeah, and it's important too to understand that this concept of classification, it ebbs and flows. The nature the nature of the laws we see across the country right now are such that it is more and more difficult to properly classify somebody as an independent contractor. You've got AB5 out in
Yeah,
California. You've got other laws. New Jersey is real tough. Illinois is real tough. Even Utah, that is a very conservative state generally, has some pretty strict classification rules and protections for employees versus independent contractors. And so, because of that, you've got this patchwork of states across the country. It becomes more and more difficult to operate in an independent contractor model now than it was, say, 10 years ago. It really was about 10 years ago that you started to see some of these class action lawsuits with FedEx. Swift Knight have gone through some. CR England has gone through some, and others that have really caused a pretty significant shift away from these independent contractor models. But that's not to say that they're not there. And there are a lot of good models out there that folks can be very profitable in. And many of them are our clients. You're seeing now over the last 2 years, you're seeing, well, it really started and it corresponded with the spot market. As the spot market just exploded, you saw more and more people jumping away from the lease purchase settlement carrier type
Right.
models to going out, getting their own authority, and really capitalizing on the spot market when it was, through the roof. What we've seen as a result is people went out, they got PPP loans, they got idle loans, there was a lot of free money out there, or cheap
Right.
money, I should say.
Yeah.
And so they went out and they bought all these trucks at fairly high prices. Well, now we all know where the spot market's at.
Yeah.
A lot of people are fleeing the spot market, getting back into contract freight. And as a result, people are defaulting on these loans. And it's a really tough thing to watch. And if you look, it's easy to make money when things are good.
That's right.
Pretty much anybody can do it, right?
Colton,
And that's what we
you
saw.
got Colton, do you got a camera over here? You looking at my notes, because that leads perfectly to follow up on.
I don't.
So this is where I was going. I wanted to go next with the conversation. We talk about the show a lot here, and one of the main proponents that we also stress on this show is understanding and knowing your numbers. When we say knowing your numbers, understanding what it is for your operating costs, your fixed costs, and your variable costs. A lot of people just jumped into the business, like you said. At one point in time, rates were so great that it didn't matter. You could just throw anything up against the wall and it stuck. Now this is a different time. This is a different, for people that have been through the ebbs and flows of this business and understand what do you got to do to kind of stay in business. And the number one proponent thing that you have to know and have to understand is knowing your numbers, knowing what is profitable, so that you can understand what is cheap freight. Because to everybody, you hear the big word, all stop hauling cheap freight. Well, cheap freight is different for everybody because everybody's cost is absolutely different. So you have to understand, it's critical to understand what those costs are. And by getting involved with you guys, you can kind of help guide them and show them so that they can understand the breakdown of their operating costs. If you could talk a little bit about understanding operating costs and some ways that you guys can help get people in line to understanding that and bettering their business, that would be perfect.
Yeah, great. So I guess just to follow up on that, you're absolutely right. Somebody that went out, say a year and a half ago, and spent $160,000 on a Cascadia with 250, 300,000 miles on it. And I've seen that.
Yeah,
Prices were through the roof.
Yep.
Right? Somebody that did that, their costs are going to be significantly higher per mile than somebody who either explosion of prices, bought that same Cascadia for, say, $90,000. And so, that person has a much smaller nut to cover on a per mile basis than the person that spent the 160. And so you've got to understand those costs, and it all starts with having this stuff, having your ducks in a row. If you're not doing what you need to do in terms of bookkeeping, tracking your paperwork, having a system in place to organize all this stuff, then there's no way you're going to know what your costs are. It's just not going to happen. And so it starts by getting that system in place, making sure you've got a good, solid profit loss statement, that profit loss statement is broken out very clearly, but between the different types of costs, your fixed costs, your variable costs, how far do you need to drive to cover your nut? And then once you've covered the nut, how much more do you need to drive to cover your personal expenses? And then how much more do you need to drive to cover, the savings and cover, whatever it may be? You've got to understand that, and it starts with having a good plan in place. There's lots of software out there. There's trucking specific software. There are apps. There are, QuickBooks. We actually use QuickBooks with a lot of our clients. Whatever it is, choose one. I don't care. Choose one and use it and understand it, and then have somebody who can work with you to do the other side of things for you. If you want to get into the weeds of the paperwork and you want to, key in those transactions, that's fine. Do it. We can come in and step in and do everything from that point on. If you don't want to worry about that and you want it all to be kind of automated, then let's get you on a system that pulls in your bank statements and your credit card statements and those transactions. And let's classify things and set up your own personalized chart of accounts. And, let's do things in a way that you can then understand your numbers and track things in a way that makes sense to you. If it doesn't make sense to you, but it makes sense to me, it's not going to do you any good. You've got to understand it. And sometimes it's a learning experience. That's why we tell people, I don't recommend you come in from off the street or come from truck driving school and jump into getting your own authority and hopping on load boards or hopping over to a brokerage. You need to come in and ideally drive as a company driver for a period of time, then
Absolutely.
perhaps drive as an independent contractor for a period of time. You need to learn the industry first.
Learn the business.
I can't just talk to you and tell you, hey, these are your costs. It's going to be foreign to you. You're just not going to understand it. So you've got to learn it first, and that takes some time. You can't learn it overnight.
And it comes from shifting. That's very important that you say that, because you have to shift the mentality. If you like you say, starting with that plan, if you know that you have an idea, that you have an entrepreneurial spirit, and that you're going to go in the entrepreneurial route, then you have to have an idea of switching your mindset from a company driver, because that's another key thing that a lot of people don't do. You're still operating their business as if they were a company driver, and they're thinking in their mind, unfortunately, miles equals dollars, and it's not necessarily that case.
No, it's the opposite. You want to do as few miles as you can for the most revenue you can.
Yeah. And like I said, goals can change. If you come into this and you're like, nah, I only ever want to be a company driver. Okay,
that's fine.
Go drive as a company driver. That's fine. But if 6 months down the road, you decide, I think I might kind of like this idea of becoming an independent contractor and doing this on my own. Great. Change your goals, but don't act on that goal right away. Drive for another period of time as a company driver, acting as though you're an independent contractor. Track the costs of your fuel. Track every time that truck goes into the shop, even though the company's paying for it.
Yep.
Track, see what that costs. So you're like, oh yeah, when I do a PM, it's going to cost me this. When I need an alignment, it's going to cost me that. Understand those costs as a company driver, then make the jump.
Right.
And then once
you
you've done that,
want to make the jump when you see what the actual costs per mile of running a truck. And that's what I think happened in the last 3 years, was so many people got into this that came out of, some of them came out of driving school. A lot of them came off as, they had been company drivers with good jobs and thought, you know what, boss is making all the money, now it's my turn. And did exactly what you just described, bought that used Cascadia, no offense against Freightliner, for $160,000, and then it all went downhill from there.
That's
Yeah.
the smartest thing that's the smartest thing that someone could do. That's right now. That's looking. That's a company. They're in a company position right now. Start getting spreadsheets or understanding the software that we just talked about, knowing your numbers. Hypothetically, learn the numbers on somebody else's dime. If you can do that, and if you can get that and master that and understand what the benchmarks are for, if you understanding that, okay, the benchmark should be, I should be trying to operate this truck at an optimal number. We'll just say $1.50 per mile. If you can get enough information to plug into the spreadsheets to understand that you're making at least $1.50 a mile on your truck or whatever, well, what does that do to profitability? What does that do for understanding the miles, fixed cost and the variable cost, all those different things? If you can start doing that on the company's dime before it's actually your money, that is the smartest way to kind of get to shifting that mindset, to understanding what is it going to take to stay in business, and better yet, to stay successful in business. If you can do that on somebody else's dime.
Absolutely. And some of your listeners might be saying, well, I didn't do that and it's too late for me. That's okay. If you're still in business, if you've survived to this point and you didn't do it the way we just said, well, start now, right? Start learning, get in contact with us, get in contact with somebody to start educating you. You're not going to learn this business on your own. And the best CEOs in this country, you look at the biggest companies, your Walmarts, your Teslas, your Microsofts, Apple, pick a company that does really well. Those CEOs are not necessarily the smartest person in the room at any given time.
Yeah.
They surround themselves with people that are smarter than them in specific areas of the business.
Right.
The best CEOs know how to surround themselves and get advice, and then they then know how to act on that advice. They know how to take that advice and implement it into their business to be as successful as possible. So you need to get people that are smarter than you, helping you with your accounting, helping you with your taxes. And I promise that there may be somebody out there smarter than me at this stuff. I don't know. But most of you out there, it's not a dig. It's just facts. I'm going to know more. My team is going to know more than you. Unless you were trained at this.
You know what?
That's what we
do.
do.
They know more about driving trucks and loading freight than you do. And everybody is an expert in his or her field. And I don't think there's anything that I'm championing your cause. There's nothing wrong with going and getting help. A lot of people in this industry still think that, they've got to know everything themselves. Well, you're not going to know everything yourself. And taxes change, and opportunities from those taxes change as well. And you may very well lose that opportunity because you didn't act on it because a tax bulletin came out. And that's the one thing I've learned, is that tax bulletins are always coming out. And that's why you need a really good accountant. Whether you've got one truck or 1,000 trucks, you need good accountants that can keep up on the tax codes, because there's all sorts of things happening. There may be write-offs that are available, depreciation allowances. There may be all of a sudden a 90-day period where you can do something, get some sort of grant. There's all sorts of wonderful things that accountants find out for people if they're dialed in, if that accountant is dialed into the trucking industry.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like there's a question out there from James. Ballpark, how much would we charge to process both individual tax return for me and my wife, plus an S Corp? So we've got two different price points when it comes to our tax preparation. We do offer a discounted rate if individuals are using us for also the bookkeeping side of things. But without using our bookkeeping services, the price for an S corporation tax return is going to be $850, and then the individual tax returns is going to be $199. So that kind of gives you an idea. There can be other fees that come about. Just if you've got a farming operation that I don't know about, then there could be a Schedule F that we've got to throw in there. But by and large, that's going to cover most of what you need to do. And that's going to be, as you say, if you give us all the numbers, you provide us a profit loss statement, we're going to do all that, provide the K-1s, and then do your personal tax returns for that. Visit truckercfo.com. There's lots of good information out there. There's lots of ways they can contact us. This is not my way of ending things, by the way, but I just thought it was a good time to mention it. I'm free to go on for a bit still. So thanks, James, for the question. We'd be happy to help you out. And the other thing I would say about price, if you are price shopping tax preparation,
come on.
There's nothing I can do. If you come to me and you're like, well, hey, I can get it for $400 or I can get it for $200, then go. Yeah. You, especially when it comes to this, you get what you pay for. And by no means, that doesn't mean that we're the most expensive. Don't take that the wrong way. We charge a fair price, but you are going to have an ROI on what we charge you. There will be an ROI for that. We've got example after example of saving people a lot of money. And when I say a lot of money, there are cases of us saving people tens of thousands of dollars just by making some pretty simple recommendations on how they can change some things up. That doesn't mean we're going to save everybody tens of thousands of dollars, but you're going to have a savings overall. And if it's not a savings, we at least are going to do it right and make sure in comparison to what you are supposed to do or what somebody else may do for you, we're going to make sure it's done correctly and you're going to pay the least amounts you need to pay compared to what other people do for you.
Colton,
let me say one more. Let me kind of follow up on that just for a quick second as well. When it comes to pricing, we talk, and we're all business people. And just like for your truck needs to make a certain amount of money. By all means, I'm not saying that. And Colton, you did a great job in saying that you're not necessarily the most expensive. But as my granddaddy said something to me when I was really young, say, son, it's always it's you can do things first class or half ass. And you're better off doing things first class, and it only takes one time to do the job right. So make sure that if you get involved with someone, that they understand, they know what they're doing, and that you're getting a fair price for what it is that you're looking for. I don't think that there's you have to make a decision as a business person that this is an investment back into your business. And I just can't stress that enough. Sometimes you're not looking for you're not looking at a shade tree mechanic to go out there and do an end frame on your truck up underneath the shade tree. So you need to be making sure that you're taking the same care and caution when it comes to actually doing your paperwork and doing your bookkeeping and knowing and understanding your numbers, because this is a critical component. This could be the difference by getting involved and understanding. Not necessarily saying that you have to go and go to Colton's business. By all means, when he's on our show, we would love for you guys to go, and I put a link there for you guys to go check out his website to go get involved with them. If you want to do that, that's entirely up to you. But make the investment in yourself and in your business, because this could be the difference between you still being in business next year at this time versus you continuing to do things and operating off of, well, I got enough money off of this settlement, or I made enough money this week to stay in business.
Yeah,
you got to shift your mentality. You got to shift the way you think about your business, and you got to spend time. To quote, I think it was Robert Kiyosaki, you got to spend more time working on your business than working in your business.
Very good. That's the best thing I learned from a business coach that I had a few years back, was spend more time working on the business than in the business. And it's so important. So it goes back to what I said earlier. They are their CEO of their business first. They are the driver of that truck second. And if they think that way, they'll be more profitable.
Totally. Colton, what is how does it work when your clients have something they want you to look at? And I'm going to factoring agreements. They're all over the place. There's hidden costs and things like that. Even on financing equipment through leases. It's done, quite often, a lease purchase. But sometimes the costs are hidden. Is how easily can our listeners, if they are clients of yours, get someone to take a look at either a finance package, lease package, or a factoring package, so they know exactly what they're paying?
Yeah, we do that all day long. I've got an entire department in our business that they are looking at factoring reports and brokerage reports and settlements from companies all across the country. We're doing it every single day. I'm not going to tell you it's always easy. Oftentimes it's not, and there are
No,
those hidden fees. But what I can tell you is that if you take those same reports and you go to just an everyday accountant on the street that's kind of a generalist. They're working with the plumber and the contractor and the dentist, and they're doing all this stuff. They will miss stuff because they don't see
yeah.
this stuff every single day. They've probably never seen a factoring report in their life up to that point,
Well,
and
you
so
know
they're going to
what?
miss
It's
stuff.
That's why we have specialists for everything. If you do you have a problem with your skin, you go to a dermatologist. For the same reason, you don't go to a GP, and you certainly don't go to an internist. It's the same thing. Now, there's an opportunity now for people in the trucking industry. All of a sudden, there's a specialist out there, and that's why we wanted to get you on so badly, because you're a specialist, not a generalist. And I think so many of our listeners and so many people I've spoken to, especially in the last 3 years, have done such stupid stuff. And it wasn't that they're stupid people, they just made a mistake, but it was very expensive. You
Yeah,
know,
it can be
when I get
very
a phone
expensive.
call from somebody and I say, they wanted to put a truck on with our company, and first question I always ask is, what are your monthly payments? And they say, well, I made a mistake and I ended up, making a bad deal, and my payments are $5,700 a month for my Cascadia. I just tell them, you know what, forget it. Give the truck back, because you're
Mhm.
never going to get in front of this.
Right. Yeah, we have situations kind of along those lines where somebody will come to us and they're like, "Well, I wanted more deductions for the year, so I just made double payments on my truck." Well, it doesn't work that way. You
No.
don't just get to make double payments on your truck because you're not actually even deducting that truck payment as your expense. You've got depreciation, and the depreciation is fixed. So you could have used that cash to do something else within your business to grow it. That stuff happens all the time. Looks like there was another question I'm
Yeah,
just seeing
I was
here.
going to answer James' question, but if you want to, you by all means, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, there are automated ways where with different software, and there's a few of them out there. We actually do it through QuickBooks,
Yep.
where we can connect your bank account, your credit cards, some fuel cards, and those transactions come in automatically.
Right.
And then you can memorize the coding. So if it's from a certain vendor, it could be this expense or that expense, and then you review those. And we do that. Our services are going to be that we'll review that coding and make sure all that coding is done. We have other services where you do it for yourself. And then we'll come in and just kind of come in on the back side of things and make sure everything's in order. So the thing we like to do is we don't want to stick a square peg into a circle, or maybe it's the other way around for that phrase. I don't know. Um, but we really want to work with folks depending on what their situation is. So if QuickBooks is the right tool for you, great. If it's a carrier settlement model and all you need, I think I said this already, but if that's all you need and you just need the profit loss statement, let's get you set up the right way. And oftentimes that QuickBooks model is going to be a great one for folks that have a more sophisticated operation.
As you guys sit down and when you start talking, if someone gets involved with you and they start going over their plans and stuff like that, do you guys also maybe come up with different suggestions? And this is a question. I'm not saying that you guys. I'm curious if this is something that you guys might do. Do you try to help find other ways that they can generate income or revenue with their business? Say, for instance, if you're talking to a guy and he has an extra truck or an extra trailer or something like that, he's not necessarily using it at the time. Do you guys kind of tell them, well, hey, there's an opportunity, maybe you can do this on a rental, like you can rent this equipment out and possibly, or is there some other way to kind of help generate revenue as well?
Yeah, we will. I have conversations all the time with folks, and oftentimes it comes through that tax preparation process. It might be at the quarterly estimated tax time frame where they're working with me or working with an enrolled agent within our company, where those questions are going to be better answered by somebody at our level than, say, our department that's just working with your receipts and coding of those things. So you got to make sure you're talking to the right person with anything. But yes, when we have those conversations, we will make certain recommendations and talk to them specifically about their situation in an effort to save them money. Like I say, oftentimes it has to do with the way they file taxes. But as we're doing that, we're going to hey, you've got this, you've got this truck and trailer, but your revenue is not indicative of somebody who's got 2 trucks. So what's going on? Well, it's just sitting there. Well, why aren't you selling it? Well, I might get back into, so yes, we're going to have those types of conversations with people based on what the circumstances are and when those conversations come about.
Good deal. Good deal.
Colton, have you ever fired a client because they just weren't taking your advice?
I will not fire a client because they're not taking our advice. Have I fired a client before? Yes, we have fired clients before. There are people out there. I know this is a shock. There are people out there that are just not very nice.
Oh, I know.
And it doesn't matter what you do, how good you treat them. Listen, we are not perfect. If you're working with somebody that they tell you they're perfect and they've never made a mistake, they're lying to your face, right? Mistakes happen. For us, it's if a mistake does happen, what are we going to do to rectify that? Are we going to own up to that mistake? And we do. That's the way we do things. But stuff comes up, and we have fired people because they were just unreasonable, and not always because we made a mistake, just unreasonable in general. It happens. Just because we're a fit for you doesn't necessarily mean you're a fit for us. And but for the most part, things work out well. We're going to work with almost anybody, and it's very rare that we have to fire somebody. I think it's been a couple of years since we fired a client, actually.
Okay, so I'm looking at the time, and I want to make sure before I get a chance to let me take this one down real quickly. But before we go any further, I want to give Colton, I want to give you an opportunity to let our listeners, let everyone know where they can find you, how they can get in contact with you, and any other way that you want, any other information that you would like to share with us, and anything in particular. Before you get to those things, is there anything in particular tonight that we didn't cover that you think is important that we might need to say? Because I'm looking at the time, and when we have good people on, the time just flies by.
It did fly by. So best way to get in touch with us, go to Trucker CFO. That stands for Chief Financial Officer. So truckercfo.com. A lot of great information out there. Check out our resources page. We got all of our podcasts out there, our blogs out there. There's a lot of great information. I mentioned earlier on, we've got our tax guide, and I think somebody was asking or saying that they were interested in the tax guide. That tax guide is going to be coming out later this week or over the weekend. When you go to our homepage, there's going to be a link that you can click on. We ask that people provide us their name, email, address at a minimum. There's also a field for phone number. We would like to be able to follow up with you on that, but download that guide and you'll be able to get a lot more good information. You can email us at info@truckercfo.com. That's info@truckercfo.com. You can call us at 800-533-4230. That's 800-533-4230. During business hours, our phone system actually shut off about 30 minutes ago. So give us a call tomorrow morning. All of this information on how they can contact us can be found in the footer of our webpage. So that's why I say easiest way, go to truckercfo.com. There's also a pretty slick little chat feature on our website. I'm sure people have seen those on other websites. Click on this little button down in the bottom right, and they can talk with us. The cool thing about what we've done with our website, look, our clients are truckers. They don't have the time to spend sitting down and reading a whole bunch of information. Now, I get our tax guide they've got to read, but all of the other information. And in fact, within our tax guide, we use a lot of audio features. We do our podcast. Pretty much all of our content is in some shape or form going to be available via audio content. So they can listen to this stuff while they're driving down the road. You can listen, hopefully listening about taxes doesn't put them to sleep. We don't want any of that, but they can still listen and learn the information. Give us a call. We're happy to talk to you. And you mentioned, actually, I don't remember if it was this one or the last one I did. I am on the Radio Nemo programs. Road Dog Radio, I forget the channel, 146, I think. 146. I'm on every Tuesday morning at 8:30. We've got a segment called Driving Your Dollars. In fact, Chuck, I think that's where you heard me maybe originally, but check me out there. And all of those are actually streamed also to our website, and you can find all that information also on the major podcast platforms. So that's about it, I think.
One more quick follow-up question. You spoke a little earlier about the ebook, but the tax tip ebook. When did you say that you guys were gonna have that available, and how do people get a hold of that?
Yep, I'm actually finalizing. It's on my plate right now. I'm finalizing the edits tonight, and then it should be posted to our website by late this week. So Friday, possibly over the weekend, but it's going to be available very soon.
All right, you guys. It's right there in the chat. It's on the page. His website. You can definitely go there. Like I said, we're going to be reposting this podcast back live. Of course, it's already going to be on Facebook and everything automatically, and we're going to repost it on Instagram. If you guys are on Instagram, we'll repost the whole entire interview back on Instagram as well. So if you want to be able to see it there, if you missed anything, you can go back and refer to those things. Chuck, before I'm looking at the time, it's about that time. How do people get in contact with you? And we'll get ready to back this thing into a hole and park.
Yeah, it's a time. It really flew. First of all, Colton, I want to take a moment on behalf of Rico and me to thank you for joining us tonight. And on behalf of our listeners, what you told us is fantastic. I think it's music to a lot of people's ears because people need financial guidance in this business. It's a money business. So much money goes through your hands, unlike any other business. But how much do you get to keep? And that's, that falls on having somebody with good financial acumen. And obviously you and your team have it. So kudos to you guys. And I want to thank you on behalf of all of us. If anybody needs to get hold of me, I still have an email address at Trafix, chuck@trafix.com. Leave your phone number. And I will get back to you probably on the phone rather than sending you an email. And if I can help anybody with anything, whether it's getting set up with one of the Trafix offices or just an issue you're having in your business. I know last week I had a long conversation with one of our listeners who thought it would be a good idea to open up a load broker service because he's been owning a truck for many years and very successful. And by the time we finished, he had second thoughts. So you know what? I'll tell you anything you want to know that I know. So if I can help anyone, please reach out. And with that, Rico, I'm going to let you back in a hole for another week.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you guys for sticking around, hanging out with us. We're always grateful and humble for you doing so. Want to thank once again, reiterate, thanks Colton for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Come on with us to share some very insightful and helpful information that we definitely have been looking for someone to come on and share with us. If you don't mind, we humbly ask, like, share, subscribe. If you found anything that was broadcast tonight or anything previously helpful to yourself or anybody else, tell a friend to tell a friend. We're grateful that you took a little time to hang out with us. So once again, for my co-host Chuck Snow, thanks again, Colton, for hanging out with us. Be safe out there, everybody. Stay healthy. Keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise. And God willing, we'll talk at your same time, same place next week. God bless you and good night.
Catch you on the flip-flop.
Thanks, Colton.
No problem. Thanks guys.